Hello and welcome to Quilt Addicts Anonymous. I'm Stephanie Soebbing. Normally we bring you quilting tutorials and show you some of the newest arrivals for modern quilting fabric, but today we have a special video. I'm going to share 15 things that I didn't know when I started quilting. I started quilting in 2007 after I graduated from college. I was very busy in college. I was the editor of our student newspaper. I always had some kind of an internship going, and I had a full class schedule and a full social life. So I did not have any time. I was working constantly. And then when I just was working 40 hours a week, I did not know what to do with myself. So I had a sewing machine that my grandmother had gotten me when I was 14 or 15. I knew how to use it, kind of, and I had a book on how to quilt. So this was like, I think YouTube existed, but not in the capacity that it does today. And so I didn't really have videos to teach me. I would DVR on anything that said quilting once I figured out that capability and how to do that. So I would watch a lot of Love of Quilting. And so I would learn some stuff, but not always the basics, because they were more geared towards like people who'd been doing it a little while. And then I had an aunt who quilted, but she didn't live near me. She lived 3 hours away. So I figured out a lot of things on my own, and it took a while. And I made a lot of mistakes. So we're going to talk about what some of those are today. So that way, if you too are kind of learning without any like in-person resources, you can maybe figure out some of the things you're like, oh, that's why I can't get that thing to work. Because I definitely had a lot of those moments. Eventually, like 2 years in, I discovered we had a very active local quilting guild near us. And I discovered that there were local quilting shops where I could purchase fabric instead of just going to like Joann's and Hobby Lobby and Hancock Fabrics at the time, which is great. You know, you can get some stuff, but the longevity of the fabric you get there isn't as good as what you get from a quilt shop. And also there aren't as many people who are able to help you troubleshoot what it is that's going on. So we're going to go over those 15 things. I hope you really enjoy them. And it should be a good time, hopefully. So laugh at my mistakes. I've also brought in like one of the very first large quilts I ever made. And this quilt, I gave it to my husband when we were engaged to be married. So that is now 14 years ago. And it is the worst example of quilting that I have still, because I gave away a lot of those first ones. But this quilt is used every single day by him 14 years later. So that just goes to show you that even if your quilt is not like perfect and it's not going to win a blue ribbon at a quilt show, that doesn't mean that it's not going to be loved and cherished, because this one certainly is, even though it is a hot mess by my standards today. So it's okay. If you're on the journey and you're learning, your quilts are still going to be loved and adored, even if they're not going to win a blue ribbon. All right, so the first thing that I didn't know when I started quilting is that not all presser feet are 1/4 inch presser feet. We actually have an entire video about this in our beginner quilting series that shows you how to find a 1/4 inch seam, because I didn't realize that the standard foot that comes with your machine is meant to be for dressmaking, which is often a 3/8 or 5/8 inch seam. So for a good year and a half, when I started sewing, I would follow the instructions in my book and line the fabric up exactly with the edge of my presser foot. And then I would always have a very perfect 3/8 inch seam, and I didn't realize why. So that was a great revelation when I finally took my first in-person quilting class. And I'll never forget, her name is Donna Landman. She came over and she took one look at my machine and goes, "That's not a 1/4 inch foot." And then she showed me how to tape it off. And like the very next week, I showed up at class with an entire quilt top finished with triangle points, absolutely gosh darn perfect. And I was like, this just changed my life. It has literally changed my life. And I didn't know at the time how much it would change my life, because this is what I do for a living now. And it has changed the lives of my entire team as well. So thank you, Donna Landman, for showing me that a 3/8 inch foot is, or the dressmaker foot is not a 1/4 inch foot. So the second thing I didn't know when I started quilting was what a walking foot was. This is a walking foot. It came with my machine. I thought it was the craziest looking contraption ever, and that it would never be needed for anything that I needed to sew. And what it does is it's got a second set of feed dogs on top here. So that way when you are quilting, so you use this when you're binding or when you are quilting straight line or wavy line quilting on your home sewing machine, What this does is when this goes up and down, it also moves your feed dogs on top. So it moves all 3 layers of your quilt together at an even pace so that there's not bunching, and it's a lot easier on your back, and everything just goes a lot better. This entire queen size quilt with flannel backing, I quilted straight down every single one of these seams with just my regular presser foot because I didn't know any better. And you can see, because I didn't use my walking foot, this fabric has just pulled this way over time because it all got stretched that way. So this is a must-have if you're going to quilt on your home sewing machine, or also if you're attaching binding to the edges. The third thing that I didn't know when I started quilting is that pressing when you are working with your fabric is incredibly important because it does a lot of things. It helps your thread lay nicely with your fabric pieces once you've sewn them together, helps with longevity, and the way you press helps impact the final look of your quilt. When I first started quilting, I pressed all my seams to the side because that's what we were told to do, and that's what the book said to do, and I would always press it under the dark side of that fabric, so that way it would be hidden and you wouldn't have a shadow. And that's how it was explained to me. That's what I did every single time. But as I started doing more quilting of my own quilts on the long arm, I realized that if I press my seams open, that I not only got better results, especially when you're joining points, but I also was able to open up the possibilities of quilting significantly, and I was able to get right into those corners without busting needles and popping fuses once I started pressing seams open. So if you take our beginner course, I do show you to press your seams to the side because I think when you get started, that is easier to help nest your seams. But as you get more comfortable with it, definitely experiment with pressing your seams open because you're going to get a lot better results over time. I go over pressing in every single video tutorial that we do, so pay attention to that and get the best iron you can afford. I press with an Aliso because it gets super hot and really makes for really flat seams. And then I also use a wool pressing mat. We don't sell either of those things. And then I also use a spray mister when I am pressing instead of water in my iron because I don't want to get my iron gross. And we do sell the spray misters. So the fourth thing I didn't know when I started quilting was what all the threads were for and why you needed so many different varieties. So when you start sewing, if you go into like a Joann's or something, there will be so many thread options. It is crazy. And you really need to make sure that you are not just going for the color that works. You need to make sure that you're getting the right application for it. So when I first started quilting, I used this a lot. It is a cotton thread. You get it at Joann's. I think I got it because it was meant for quilting. It's 100% cotton. So you do want to make sure that you're using 100% cotton when you are piecing your quilt. But it's super, super linty. If you have a lot of lint, then that means you have to service your machine more often. And that's not an inexpensive thing to do. Aurifil, this is not linty at all. This is all I use now. And we do have this available. Other things that you might see, Coats & Clark, I found to be really linty. Dual Duty, I also found to be really linty. This is a silk thread. I use this for hand stitching applique only. This is like a metallic thread. You would not want to be using that for piecing. Some of the sulkies that you'll see are primarily for garments, and sometimes they're just for machine embroidery, so they're not strong enough to actually hold stuff together. It's just meant to look pretty on top of a fabric. Of course, we have jeans thread. This is home decor thread, and this is the thread that I use when I am quilting in my long arm. I get Glide, and my machine likes that, so that's what I use exclusively, and I do use a polyester for that. Mostly because I like to sometimes go kind of dense with my quilting, and this you can build up on in a way that you can't with cotton. So just as you're looking, you want to make sure that you understand what the purpose of that thread is and that it is accurate to what you are actually going to be sewing and working on. But you cannot go wrong with Aurifil thread. Once you start using this, you're probably never going to want to use another thread for piecing because it is just fantastic. The number 5 thing that I didn't know when I started quilting was that you need to change your rotary cutter blade a lot more often than you think. People just use them forever and ever and ever. And if you are like having to put a lot of elbow grease in it, then it's been time. It was time a long time ago to switch that. When you go through that, it should feel like you are cutting through butter. It should be nice and easy, and it should just go straight across. Here at Quilt Addicts Anonymous, we used to have to cut our Stash with Stephanie subscription club by hand. We would typically go through about 8 bolts in a 4-hour shift, and we would change our blades out at the beginning of the next shift because it needed it. So if you're cutting a quilt and you've cut your whole quilt, you've trimmed everything on it, and you're ready to go on to the next one, it's time to get a new blade. If you're feeling like, okay, I'm really kind of having to push on this, and you're feeling it in your wrist and you're feeling it in your shoulder, change that blade out. I know they feel like they're really expensive, but wouldn't you rather feel good and not have a sore body and be able to enjoy your craft and then spend another couple dollars to replace your blade? So just swap out that blade. I guarantee probably everybody needs to do it right now if it's been more than like a day since you've done it. It's just go do it. It's okay. Just change that blade. The 6th thing I didn't know when I started quilting was what a quilt sandwich was. I distinctly remember, and this person is now my friend, going into Joann's to get batting for my very first quilt and asking for it. And the girl looks at me and goes, "Oh, you're ready to make a quilt sandwich?" And I just nodded, and I thought, this woman is insane. She is nuts. She has lost her damn mind. And I did not realize that making a quilt sandwich means you are putting your backing fabric with the wrong side up, and then you're layering your batting on top, and then you put your quilt top on top of that, and then you're going to secure that together with safety pins until you're ready to quilt it. And basically, your fabric is the bread, and then your batting is the meat, and that's what a quilt sandwich is. So if you hear that term and you're like, this woman's lost her mind, they have not. It's just a term you haven't heard yet. So making the quilt sandwich is a very exciting part because it means you're almost done with your quilt. Number 7 comes from our shipper. This is something that I actually knew when I made my first quilt, but there are plenty of people who don't, so we're going to cover it. So while you can use straight pins, like the same ones that you are pinning your pieces together with when you base your quilt, you want to get safety pins. You want these curved ones, because then you can like dig down and pull it up and then clamp it in place. And then you're not going to stab yourself, because we do not want to be stabbing ourselves, because when you are quilting, you're going all over the place and it's in your lap and it's on your arm, and you will just be bleeding everywhere all over your quilt if you have the straight pins. Straight pins are bad. So grab these, and you need way more than you think. I think they come at like 60 or 75 in a pack. You need like 500. Because you will have a quilt that's in progress and you won't want to have to take all the pins out to start another one. And then you just won't know where you put the bin. Like I had mine in like a rice pudding container for Jewel forever, and then I could not find the stupid thing, and then I would have to go buy more pins. So as many of these as you can get, and the bigger the better. This one is 1.5 inches wide. That's perfect. That is the absolute perfect size. Get as many of those as you can grab. So the number 9 thing I didn't realize when I started quilting, this is a really funny one. I got a good story for it. So when I was putting binding on my first quilt, I was at our family cabin and my aunt was there, who is a quilter. So I'm trying to put this binding on. And first of all, it hasn't told me that I need to fold my binding over hot dog style, keeping my edges together to create 2 layers of binding that are going to then be sewn to the edge of my quilt. And it also says, sew it to the quilt top. So I'm sitting here thinking, okay, I have to sew it to the top only. How do you do that? Because I'm a very little person. So I think, okay, I had to figure out how to peel back my batting and my backing layers and just sew this to the top only. So I'm like awkwardly trying to make this happen. And my aunt comes in and she's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, it said to sew it to the top. And I've only got 1 layer that I'm trying to sew the top, and everything else is awkwardly pushed back to the side. And she goes, no, you sew it through all 3 layers of it all at one time. And I'm just like, why would they not say this like in the instructions? So if you read my quilt instructions in my quilting books, it says to line it up with the edge of your quilt top and then sew through all 3 layers, because I know there's somebody else out there like me who's going to be like, how do I turn all this and make this happen? That binding was a hot damn mess on that first quilt, but it was cherished by a little baby, so it's totally fine. But learn from my mistakes. when you put that binding on, you're gonna fold it over hot dog style. So you're gonna go through 2 layers of binding, and then you're also gonna sew through your quilt top, your batting, and your backing fabric. And we have a full video tutorial on how to do this from start to finish if you need some help. So the number 9 thing I didn't know when I started quilting, that there's something called a quilter's knot. We have a video tutorial that shows you how to do this. Essentially, you're able to wrap the threads around a needle a few times and pull it across the thread. So that way you create this nice little neat knot at the end of the thread, and you're gonna bury that in between your batting layer. So you're gonna stick it through the backing fabric, and then you're gonna pop the knot through so that way it's concealed. Now, I did not know that this existed when I started quilting, but essentially you wanna use that anytime you start or stop quilting, because then it just gets hidden and it feels really nice on the back, as opposed to a bunch of fat knots on the back like this one. You can see I started quilting and I also ended quilting here, and there are probably hundreds of these knots all over the back of this quilt. So learn from my mistake on that one. The number 10 thing I didn't know when I started quilting is that strip piecing will save you thousands of hours on quilting. I designed this quilt, and I didn't know that that was supposed to be hard at the time, but I designed it on graph paper, and I cut and sew together every single one of these squares individually. This is a queen size quilt. It's a queen size quilt, and I didn't strip piece a thing because I didn't know that you could, and that it would make your life a lot easier. So strip piece whenever you can. We try to do that for our patterns so that way you guys can, enjoy it and have more things be done. We have an entire video on that as well. Strip piece as much as you can. All right, the number 11 thing that I didn't know when I started quilting is that there is a difference, besides how much it costs, in the fabric that you are gonna purchase from a big box store versus what you're gonna get at a independent quilt store like us, Quilt Addicts Anonymous, or one that you might visit in your hometown. You're gonna have greater longevity and better wear over time in anything that you buy from an independently owned quilt shop. But also, you are gonna have a lot better feel. Once you feel the difference and you understand the difference when you sew with it, that is when you are just like, you just don't go back. I have so many of those stories where, like, one time I was teaching essentially a triangle masterclass at my local quilting guild. This woman could not get her triangle points. It just kept stretching out on her when she was pressing things open. It's because she was using big box store fabric. Now, I totally understand that some people, that's just not in their budget to spend a little bit more. And that's why when we have our beginner quilting course, when you download that pattern, we send you a coupon for 20% off a quilt kit, because we want you to understand that difference from the start. And you also can check out our Stash with Stephanie subscription club. We give you a discount on the bundle each month. And then also our members get to save on getting additional fabric to go with that. So that's another great way to be able to quilt with the good stuff, but have be a little bit more budget friendly. If you've been hesitant, just order a fat quarter bundle, see how it goes. I guarantee you are going to notice and feel a difference, and over time you'll notice how that wears as well. It's so much better. All right, the number 12 thing that I didn't know when I started quilting is that there is a wide variety of quilting fabric styles out there. I made a lot of quilts early on that were like not me, and I gave a lot of those away just because they were cool. I enjoyed the process of making them, but it wasn't anything that I would actually want in my home as a 20-something when I was starting to quilt. And then I took this trip to go interview Kay Facet, and it was the first time I'd ever been exposed to Kay Facet fabric. And it was just eye-opening to me to see all of the bright, bold, modern, and hot pink as a neutral. And then I visited some of the shops around the area where I came back with all this fabric. And then not long after that, I ended up going to my first quilt market and seeing everything that was available out there. It's out there. I guarantee it's out there. There are things to fit every single body and everything that you like. I guarantee somebody has made a fabric for that, and you can find it. And if modern is your style, then we're your source. We get almost every modern line that comes out, and you guys can have at it and have some fun with that. All right, the number 13 thing that I didn't know when I got started quilting is sometimes you're not the problem, your sewing machine is. We have an entire sewing machine video about what you want to look for when you're purchasing your first machine, but essentially you want to probably be spending at least $500. And that will give you a machine where you're not going to be fighting with it. So if your machine is often having a bunch of thread nets eating your fabric, or you're constantly struggling with tension issues, even though you're certain you have that set correctly, that is probably a problem with your machine. It probably is just not capable of doing what you are asking it to do, because it is not, either it needs to be serviced if it is a good machine, or it just is meant to be a throwaway machine. Like, you use it until it breaks and you toss it. And that's what most of those big box store machines are. Brother, Baby Lock, Burnett, Janome, Husqvarna, Viking. Once you get to that $500 level and above, you are going to have a good machine that's going to service you. So those are really good brands. They're really well known. The other thing you want to do is make sure you get one that you can purchase locally, because you're going to have local support on how to use the machines, or, you know, when it's time to get it cleaned and serviced, because you should do that every 6 months to a year, they're going to be able to help you out with that. Here's the number 14 thing that I did not know when I got started quilting. So there's this term called the quilt police. We've got a video on 10 things that I do that the quilt police hate. So there's a difference. Like, if you get your quilt judged, or if you go to somebody who you respect as a quilter and say, how can I make this better? Then to have constructive criticism given to you at that point, that's good. If you show somebody something and you show it off at show and tell, and it is the best thing you have made to date, and you are so proud of it, and the first thing somebody does is like, well, those points don't really match. Why did you mix batik and print? Why did you blah, 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 blah? Like, cut them off. No contact with them. They do not need to be in your quilting circle. They have nothing but negativity to share to you. Learn the difference and go to the people who are going to say, oh my gosh, that is amazing. You've only been quilting for a year. That is fantastic, because you're excited. You did a great job. You deserve praise so that you can have the encouragement to keep going and keep getting better. So learn the difference. Stick with the encouraging people who are going to support you and help you rather than tear you down. That's good advice just in life in general, but quilting especially. All right, we're to the 15th and final thing that I didn't know when I started quilting, and I think it's the best thing that I didn't know it. I didn't know that quilt design was supposed to be hard. So I think it was great that I didn't know that, and I just did it, and I just went for it, because that has pretty much led me to where I'm at today. So if you have someone who's like, maybe you shouldn't try that, maybe you shouldn't do that yet, it doesn't matter. Just do it anyway. Like, I caught myself doing this myself. My daughter made her first quilt, and she was 7 at the time, and I let her long arm it, which was scary because my long arm cost as much as my used minivan, and so it felt very much like I was giving the keys to the car to a 7-year-old. And so we had a couple of conversations, and then she would try different things. She would try something new with each pass, and then she wanted to do unicorn horns with swirls, and I'm like, this is not going to happen. And she just did it. She just did it. And is it going to win an award? Hell no. But is it amazing that she did it? And is she like so excited about that quilt? And does she sleep with it every night? Yeah, she does. And so like, that's what you need as a quilter. You don't need to be told you can't do that yet, you're not ready. Like, just do it. Well, I hope you have enjoyed listening to the 15 things that I didn't know when I started quilting. And I hope that this maybe helps answer some questions for you. Like, if you're like me and you don't know that like not all presser feet are 1/4 inch presser feet, that's a pretty important thing to know. And I feel like it's a really easy thing to like screw up if you don't have someone there guiding you. So if that helped you and that helped change your quilting, awesome. I'd love to hear about it. But if this also just gives you permission to like go do the thing, like go design a quilt, even if you've been quilting for 5 minutes, like that's fine. Go do it. Have some fun. And we always want to be encouraging here at Quilt Addicts Anonymous. We want to celebrate you no matter where you're at in your quilting journey, and we want to help teach you to get better. We want to be that encouraging friend who celebrates you and encourages you to do more and do better. So make sure you subscribe, like our channel, and then you can get all of our quilting tutorials. We've got lots of series. We have a beginner quilting series. We have a triangle masterclass that teaches you all the things about triangles, and we have a pattern to go with it. We have an intro to free motion quilting series that you guys can check out. We've got lots of things to really just teach you all that you need to know about a thing so that you can go forth into the quilting world and improve and celebrate what you've accomplished and have a lot of fun with it. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Like and comment below. Tell me some of the things that you didn't know when you started quilting. I would love to hear them. Maybe we'll do a compilation video later that has some of your things that you didn't know when you started. All right, until next time, happy quilting.